And now we're on Daf Chaf Amid Beis. So we're describing the mood of Rabbi Lazar when it's Gaito Gasala. In his Damilo Adam Echad. And he met a person, according to one Girson Rashi, he met Eliyahu Navi. And this person was going to give a musashmuz, Rabbi Lazar, about his gaiva, about his feeling so bloated about himself. He was a very ugly person. He turned to Rabbi Lazar, he said, Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe. And Rebbe did not respond with shalom. But rather, what did he say to him? What were the words that came out of Rabbi Lazar's mouth? Hard to believe. Amalo Reika. You're an empty person. Kama Machor Oso Ish. How ugly is that person? You know, when you're in a state of gaiva, you put other people down. Shema Kol B'nei Ircha Mechoarim Kamoscham, about to enter into your city. Are the members of that city as ugly as you are? Amalo. So the man responds to him, Enio there. I can't answer your question whether the other members of the city are as ugly as I am. But I demand of you that you go back to the Uman that created me, meaning the Almighty, and say what you just said to me. How ugly is this vessel that you've created? In other words, when you said Ani Mechuar, then what you did is you were mavaze my creation. There's a pagam in the way the Uman made this kli. It's so ugly. And at that point, Rabbi Lazar understood that he had said the wrong thing. When he realized and he understood very well that he had sinned, Yarad, this is Rabbi Lazar, min ha-chamor, min ishtatech lefanav. He prostrated himself in front of that person. I am absolutely in agreement with you that I said things that were not appropriate. Macholi, please forgive me. So the man responds, Eini mochelecha, achetelech leuman shasastani, ve'marlo kama machor kli zeh shasisa. Why don't you go to the Rebbeinu Shalom and tell him how ugly the kli that he created is, and then if you get mechila from Hashem, then I'll grant you mechila. Chaya metayel achrav. When Rebbe Lazar realized that he was not getting mechila, he started walking behind this person, trying to think of a way of being mefayesim, achigia leiro, until he finally accompanied him into his city. Yatsu b'nei ha'ir l'kraso. The city went out to greet Rabbi Lazar. Vayu omru lo shalom alecha Rebbe, Rebbe, Mori, Mori. Amalahem, that person told the members of the city, Lemiatem korim Rebbe, Rebbe. Amru lo zeshem etayel achrecha. The man is walking behind you. The great Rabbi Lazar. Amalahem. So the person says to the members of the city, Mzeh Rabbi. If this is Rebbe, meaning Rabbi Lazar, my Rebbe, Al Yirbu Kamoso be Yisrael. There shouldn't be too many of him. Amru lo mivnei ma. Amar mivnei ma. Well, why would you say such a thing? Amalahem kach v'kach asali. This is what Rabbi Lazar did to me. He humiliated me. Amru lo afal piche mechola. Nevertheless, be mochel him. She'adam gadol b'Torah. He is one of the greatest of the generation. Amalahem b'shvilchem hareini mochela. Because you asked me, I'm going to give him a chil bilvad shelo yiragil lasos came. Make sure he doesn't get into the state of taito gasa olav, and he will be mesaper b'gnus b'nei adam miyad nichnas Rabbi Lazar b'Rab Shimon v'darash liolam yeh adam rach kikana al yehi kasha ke'erez u'lefichach zacha kana litol hemena kulmus lichtobos sefer Torah tefillin u'mezuzos. Person should always be flexible and pliant, shouldn't be tough. And therefore, Yemir Hashem, he'll be zocha that be like the kulmus that is used a quill to write a sefer Torah, tefillin, and mezuzahs. So a person who's rach kekon will be zocha the Torah. V'chein ear, the Mishnah says sheyesh ba dever o mapolis. Such a city is misane misras. Ton Rabbanan, we learned in the Brayso mapolis sha'amru. When it says in our Mishnah that if a city has this mapolis, and as a result of a strong wind, it blows down the wall, they should be Misana Misraya. That's only brios. That means that the wall itself was a healthy wall, and yet it fell because of a wind. This is not something that's normal. The low re'uos. But if you have something that's very weak and it's a wall that's meant to fall down, ain't a re'uya slipo, the low re'uya slipo. So we're not talking about ru'uos. Ru'uos means a weak wall that's designated or is in the future, it's going to fall apart. But rather, we're talking about an eina ru'uya lipo, and yet it fell. And that's the case where we see clearly the hand of God, and we need to do tainus, hasra, tshuva, etc. Now, there's something very strange in the Brayso, because we have here brios velo ru'uos, and then it says enam ru'uyos lipo. So if you just told me you need brios as opposed to ru'uyos, so what's enam ru'uyos lipo, what's that all about? It's just a repetition. Hai niu brios, hey niu she'enam ru'uyos lipo. Whatever they are, they are. The hey niu ru'os, the hey niu ru'uyos lipo. So why do you double the language? Lo tzricha, the Brayso needs to teach me that there are two categories of chomos that are enam ru'uyos lipo. So again, if it's a chomos she'enam ru'uyos lipo, then there's no tainus, etc. If it fell. I'm sorry, then there will be a tainus, I meant to say. But we're coming to exclude chomos brios. She'afal pichein hem ru'uyos lipo, even though it's a healthy wall, but nevertheless it might fall. And since it might fall, we're already anticipating based on the laws of nature, the way the wall is structured, etc., that it's going to fall, then we're not going to declare a fast day and asra as a result of its nefila. And what is a good example of this? The naflu machmas guvayu. When is it considered ru'uyos lipo, and therefore you don't fast? That's govho. In other words, it's very narrow on the bottom, and it's very high. And because of that height, any wind could blow it over. And that's al pi derech hateva. And the Rishonim talk about whether or not this wind was a ruach mitzuya, ruach she'ena mitzuya, but in any event, because of the way that this is structured and its height, then it's ru'uyos lipo. So it's not something that's a divine, intervention. Inami, I'll give you another case. De kaima aguda denara. That this wall is on the Sfas HaNor. So again, in and of itself, it might be a very strong wall. It's Brios Machmas Atzmon, but nevertheless, it's going to fall because the Mei HaNor that go up against the base of this wall, Makalkulin es Hakarka Shebisfaso. This will ruin the karka on the riverbank. And as a result, Nishchakim Yisodos Achomos Sha'olav, the very foundations upon which he built this wall are unreliable. And therefore, when it falls, there's no hasra, there's no tightness. Now let's give the flipped case. Let's get a case of a choma that's ain't a ru'uya lipol, but it's a very weak wall. In other words, it's a weak wall, but it lasts. It continues to stand. And once again, because of its weakness, it's a kosel ra'ua. Therefore, we don't fast and we don't blow the shofar when it falls down. What would be an example of a choma that is bari but roy lipo? Yahi ashisa re'ua, like that very weak wall. The Havi the Ir Nardo in the city of Nardo, the Lavi Cholif Rav and Shmuel Tuse. Rav and Shmuel were very makpid not to walk under this tree. And what they would do is makifin also this wall. They would go around the wall. Imagine 13 years had gone by since the building of this wall, and it's not it hasn't been brought down. Therefore, for sure, it's considered Einer Uyo Lipo. Nevertheless, Rav and Shmuel did not walk underneath that wall. So we have here what you might call is brios. No, it's machmas atzmon, they're brios. And they're not ru'uos. All right, they're still, the wall's still standing after 13 years. However, even though they're brios machmas atzmon, you need eino re'uyos lipo. If it's re'uyos lipo, like for example, that very tall wall or a wall that's near the riverbank, that's already re'uyos lipo. We can predict it's going to fall. And when it falls, we don't fast. However, what about a case of a wall which in and of itself is weak, but it's been standing now for 13 years? And therefore, we consider it a kosel bari, but it's royally full. That too, when it falls, is not going to generate a chiyuv of hasra and tightness. Yom Echad Ikla Rav Ada bar Ava lahasam, on a particular day, Rav Ada bar Ava was together with Rav and Shmuel, and they were walking by this wall. Amalei Shmuel Rav Neisei Mar v'Nakif. He turns to Rav and he says, "Come on, let's go around this wall. We're not going to walk underneath it." Amalei, Rav says, "Yeah, usually we don't walk underneath it because we're not going to rely on a miracle and it might fall, so we don't expose ourselves to danger. But lo tzrichna idna, in this particular set of circumstances, there's no need for a concern that the wall might fall. Why? The Ikar of Ada bar Ava Badain. Rav says to Shmuel, you know what? Every time we pass here for the last 13 years, we go around the wall. But this time we can go directly under the wall. We don't have nothing to worry about because we're being accompanied by Rav Ada bar Ava, who has Nefish Zchusei, has a lot of Zechuyos. And they're going to protect us from this towering, this wall that's threatening to fall. I'm not afraid to walk under this wall. We got the protection of our Ada bar Ava. Hold on to his coattails. Rav Huna havile lahu chamra bahu beisa re'iyah. Rav Huna had wine in a very weak house. Uboilef nuye. And he wanted to take apart the house, demolish the house before it would fall. But he found another option, another alternative. He brought Rav Ada bar Ava there. And why? Because his chus will protect them and the house will not fall down. When they came in, Moshche b'shmaita, Rav Huna engaged Rav Ada bar Ava in an ongoing Torah discussion. Adepanye, until they finally cleared out all the last wines. Basa dinafik, as soon as they left the house, nafal beisa. The bias immediately fell down. In other words, Rav Ada bar Ava, in his presence, had protected the people and the house from collapsing. Argish Rav Ada bar Ava. Now Rav Ada bar Ava realized something very funny was going on here. He began to understand that Rav Huna's kavana, when he brought him inside, v'garam lo li'shayar kidei lahashos es nefilas habayis. He engaged, Rav Huna engaged Rav Ada bar Ava in Torah conversations, stalling for time until they would get whatever they had to get out of it and clear out Basa Nafik Nafal Basic. Ikvad. Rav Ada bar Ava had Kpeda. Why? Because Savrale ki ha di Omer of Yanai li olam al yamod adam b'makom sakana. So all this, Rav Ada bar Ava figured out. That a person should not expose himself to danger. V'yomer asisa asin lines, God, bring about a miracle, save me from this danger. Sheva ein osim lo nes. The imtim salomer osim lo nes. Even again, first and foremost, we shouldn't have relied on this. We're not allowed to expose ourselves to danger. But secondly, imtimtzi lomar osim lo nes. Even if I grant you that God will bring about a miracle, it's still not kedai. It's not worthwhile. Menakilo mizchuyosa. This will subtract from his merits in the world to come. Omer of Hanan Maikra. What is the pasuk from which we derive the conclusion that Zchuyos ha'adam mismatim machmas nisim sha'osim imo tichsiv? It says with regard to Yaakov Avinu, before he met Esav, it says Katoti mikol chasadim mikol emes. He was afraid that maybe nismatu zchuyosa, because of the great chasadim that Hashem did for him. And for the truth that he spoke, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Mekayim his Havtachos. So the Gemara asks, Mayavi Uvda, the Rabbi Ado Barava. What was Rabbi Ado Barava's great schus? What was so unique about him that he could protect everyone against an impending danger? And Gemara answers, Ki Hod Hitmar Shalu Talmida. The Rabbi Ado Barava, but meh herachti yom. What schus do you have that you lived a long life? Longevity. I was very careful not to get angry in my house, even when certain cases you're allowed to get angry or feign anger, but no, he was a chassid and he would avoid it. No anger. Not only that, lo tza'adati b'fnei micha gadol mimenu. When we were walking in an entourage, I would never surpass the chacham. I would always stay behind. And I never thought Torah thoughts in a bathhouse or a bathroom, a place which is full of tzoah and meraglayim. Below alachti arba amos, below Torah, below tefillin. Now, this is an amazing thing because, we put on that tefillin, we take it off, but that's not really the halacha. The halacha is you should wear your tefillin the whole day. And that's exactly what Rav Ado Barava did. Furthermore, lo yashanti beis hamedrash lo shenis kva, lo shenis harot. You're allowed to take a little bit of a nap, according to the strict letter of the law, even in a beis hamedrash. But Rav Ado Barava didn't want to take chances. And therefore, he would implement a midas chasidus, go beyond the letter of the law, and he wouldn't even sleep a little nap, a short nap. We call it a power nap, a shenas haroy, inside a beis medrash. Below sachti b'takolas chaveri. It's very interesting when a person gets into a debate with someone. If he feels he wins the debate, then it brings him to a state of joy because he trumped his competitor. But Rav Ado Barava says about himself that he never once had any sort of pleasure in the aftermath of someone who had a dvar takol. Sometimes, when a child is young, they give him a nickname which is a little bit pejorative. I would never use that nickname. Never call him by that kinu. The Amri law, there's another opinion, Bechanichasa. In other words, it's not just some sort of nickname, but it's a name that's given as a Shem Levi, an accompanying name. Amalei Rava, Lerafram, Bar Papa, Lemalon, Mehanimim, Alisa, Davi, Ovid Rav Huna. Rav Huna was the Gadol Adar. Can you tell me anything? Because I'm already post Rav Huna's period. What did you see? What was the greatness of Rav Huna? Amalei, Rav from Papa responds, Bini Kuse, Bitziruso, Lo Dechirna, I can't tell you what happened when he was a youngster. That's too long ago. That I don't remember. But Bisvivusa, Dechirna, I do remember, and I can tell you stories about his ziknus, his older age. The Yoma, the Eva, on a cloudy day, and there was a very strong wind. Have a mefikim le beguarka didahava. They wanted to see where is Rav Huna. After all, the weather conditions are not so good. Maybe we should hire a driver to bring him to the Beis Medrash. They would put him into this Merkava, this beautiful wagon, which was connected to the Agdolos. And while Rav Huna was being, in his elder years, was being carried by a private group, he would ask the driver to go through the city, and he would check out the city. If he saw any part of the wall that was shaky, havisasale, he would break it down. Kidei shelo tipo aruach shetapel aruach hamnasheves biyom ha'meunan al pnei adam. Since the weather was inclement and it was a cloudy day, the winds were flying. He would susarle. Imagine the man is the Gadol Adar. He's being taken by wagon, personally driven to the Beis Medrash. And what is he interested in? Breaking down and demolishing walls that, in his evaluation, were weak walls. If the owner of the wall could rebuild the wall, funnily, he would build it out of his own funds. But Elo Efshar, if he doesn't have the funds to rebuild the wall, Bunile Iu Mididei, Rav Huna would dig into his own pocket and pay whatever it would cost to demolish the walls. V'cholpanya demali Shabbos, another story about Rav Huna. On every Shabbos, have a mishadash shluchah l'shuka. He would send a shliach into the vegetable market. V'chol yarkad havi payish l'ginoi, and if he saw that there was leftover surplus vegetables at the end of the day, and it's not going to be sold, is zavinle. He would ask his shliach to buy them, and they would be thrown into the river. So the Gemara says If this is surplus vegetables, why are you destroying it in the water? Why not feed it to the aniyim? And your answer is Zimnin the Somcha Datayu, that the aniyim would rely on the fact that these Yerakos would be given to them, below Asul Mizmin, and therefore they wouldn't come and buy the Yerakos for Shabbos. They can say we don't need it. There's always that surplus, and therefore we have a chash that Lo Yisharu Lemochram Yerakos Sheyikno Samehem Avur Aniyim. So the Mochrim don't want to get left, stuck with all these leftovers, Yerakos, which they're gonna have to take a loss. So instead, Rav Huna would buy them up. And why wouldn't he give it directly to the Aniyim? Because the Aniyim would rely on the fact that there were Yerakos. They wouldn't come to purchase Yerakos for Shabbos. They think they don't need any because there'll always be some extra Yerakos for them. And we have to worry that the Mochrim of Yerakos, Lo Yisharu Yerakos, Sheyikne Osam Mehem Avur Aniyim. They won't have anything for them for Shabbos. Lo yisharu lemochrim Yerakos sheyikno samihem avur ani. Just 1 second. I think he has a footnote here in which he explains it a little bit better. He says, because there would be times when they would rely on Rav Huna's gifts, if he would give them the gifts, Rav Huna, and not come to the market to buy for Shabbos. The result would be that they would lack food for Shabbos on such days when there were no leftover vegetables to purchase. So they would rely on Rav Huna, and they wouldn't even bother to come and buy for the Shabbos. And if there were no leftovers, they'd be left without food for Shabbos. Then the Gemara says, why doesn't he feed the animals? Why does he throw it into the river? We're not allowed to feed that which is humanly consumable and edible to the animals. That's like he's boed b'tovish sheshpi Hashem ba'olam. So therefore, Rav Huna would throw it into the nar, and that's not called bizi ochlim, because the river would carry these vegetables to another place, and that's where people would find them and eat them. Why does he have to throw it into the river? He shouldn't buy it at all. And the Gemara answers, Nimteis machshilon liyasid lava. Shelo yaviu maspik Yerakos lifnei Shabbos l'tzorch sudas Shabbos. V'yu anoshim shelo yishar lehem Yerakos l'kach. If Rav Huna didn't buy up the surplus, then the sellers would not bring enough vegetables to the market for the tzorech of sudas Shabbos. The people will be left without vegetables for Shabbos, because they don't want to get into a situation where they take a financial loss. But now they're guaranteed that they won't suffer any loss, even in event that there's surplus vegetables. Kihavile milsa de asusa. When Rav Huna came, he had access to refuah, to certain drugs that were beneficial. Havi mole kuza demaya. He would fill up a kli of water, v'tolile b'seifa debesa, and he would put it hanging, suspended from the opening of his house. V'yomen, he would declare, kol deboy leisi v'lishko. Anyone who needs these, this is like a gmach for drugs. Ika diamri, others say about Rav Huna, milsa de shivsa havi gamir. He was a tremendous baki in the shadim One of the shadim's name was Shivsa, and this shade and other shadim would be Mazik, Ochel. They would destroy I don't know, destroy is maybe a harsh word. They would damage a person who ate without Netilas Yadayim before Achila. So what did Rav Huna do to avoid that situation and protect the Jews from this Shivsa? Havimanach Kuza Demaya Vidolile. He would place a receptacle full of water and hang it in his house. V'yomer and declare called Ditzrich Leise V'Leil. Anyone who needs water for Netilas Yadayim in order to eat his Suda should come and enter into my house and take what he needs to wash his hands. The Lolistaken, and why was Rav Huna so motivated to guarantee that every last Jew would wash his hands before he began his meal? The Lolistaken Shalistaken Bachila below Netilas Yadayim. If you eat by holding your food without Netilas Yadayim, that's a sakona. And Kiavi Karach Rifta, when he got bread to eat, Havi Pasach Levave, he would open up the doors of his house. V'yomer, he declared Koma Detzorach Leisei V'licho. Sounds like Leil Pesach. Anyone who needs to eat, come into my house. Imagine all the aniyim packing into the house of Rav Huna. Omar Rava Kulu Matzino L'Kaima. Lebar Meha. I could imitate all the actions of Rav Huna that were mentioned earlier, except for one, the Lo Matzi Lemiva, which I cannot possibly do. Here we're on Daf Chaf Aleph. Mishum de Nefishi b'nei Chela de Mechoza. The b'nei Ha'ir Mechoza are manifold, and they come into my house. And if I'm going to make a declaration that anyone who wants to come into my house and eat, not only will the aniyim come in, but who knows who else will come in? I mean, they're going to flood my house. I mean, they're going to empty me out of anything that I own. They'll consume everything I have. He says, alternatively, there were numerous soldiers quartered in Mechuzah, whose townspeople were expected to support. So we're up to Ilfa v'Rabbi Yochanan on the top of Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, and I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you so much.